Welcome back to Switch to Linux. We have a collaborative video today. I am with the two creators of the channel Fresh Vintage, for you guys that like cars, and we're going to be doing some audio and privacy and technology crossover conversations. I'll leave it to you guys to introduce yourselves and your channel.
My name is Jay.
I'm Tom.
Yeah, there's two of us here. Sorry.
Yeah, we run Fresh Vintage channel. Classic cars, muscle cars, JDM cars, import cars. 60s through the 90s, you may see a Lamborghini though, and you probably see a Model T here and there and everything in between. So, but check us out. Please subscribe. Thanks so much.
All right, very good. So the first thing we're going to do today is we're going to talk about a trend. Now, this article is from 2017, but it has a lot of really good questions and a lot of really good talking points in it from the Los Angeles Times, including a gem of a statement at the bottom. And if you follow my channel or watch the weekly news roundup, you'll just know what a gem this is. But this is one of those things that kind of aged really badly since the 6 years this article came out. But that's the very final paragraph. So we're going to go ahead and go from there. So, all right. So this article from 2017, cars are full of tech that gets outdated fast. So people are leasing and not buying. Few things we can say out front. Of course, Dave Ramsey always says that the most expensive way to operate a car is to lease it. I don't know if that's still true or not.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Today, yeah.
Okay. These guys are guys that know more about cars than I do. It's as long as it's got four wheels and drives, I'm good with it. All right. So basically this boils down into tech. So Jay, you sent this article over to us. So if you could go ahead and give us some information about it.
Yes, the thing that jumped out at me most is that cars are starting, I'll say, are they getting outdated? The reason I say this is because years ago you could buy a car and you'd never have to update it. You could just drive it and keep it maintained and there you go. But nowadays, one of the things that jumped out is when 5G came, all the towers switched over to 5G. There were certain models of Lexus that you could not operate fully. They just got outdated. And is this the way of the future? Are cars only going to be viable and turn into a brick after 5 years? Or will they, say, have modular, screen, or like on a Tesla that has a screen? Can you replace that and everything goes back to 2030 or whatever the case may be?
Yeah, one of the things about this that you mentioned there is the 5G rollout. And one of the big pushes for 5G, despite not having all the safety information and not having really a lot of long-term studies about what 5G is or could do, they wanted to roll this out mostly so that cars could communicate more and faster. And that, to me, is kind of on the terrifying end. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts about that.
I would agree and jump in. And to take a step back, like the Lexuses with the 5G is a pretty recent story, but rather obscure car in the grand scheme of things was the Nissan Leaf. And when they went from 2G to 3G, AT&T started shutting down their 2G network. And some of these Leafs, they weren't getting brick, but they were no longer getting software updates. So suddenly your data connectivity in the car, you kind of needed it just to update certain things in the vehicle to make it function properly. That went away unless you went to the dealer and spent the money for the 3G upgrade module. So I think that's a question we're really asking here is, do we want technology? Do we want our car companies to become tech companies? And it feels like that's happening right now.
Yeah, that is one of the things in this article that they mention is that more car companies, it says, in recent years, automakers have started calling themselves technology companies, pointing to big jumps in software innovation that have improved navigation, safety, and infotainment systems. We did cover the article a long time ago on the Weekly News Roundup, indicating that infotainment systems actually cause more accidents than smoking marijuana. Actual studies were done. And the reason I pointed this out on the channel is when you're messing with an infotainment system, the big problem that we have is the infotainment systems, they're touchscreen, and they get the big Tesla ones, like the size of this iPad over here in front of Jay. there's no tactical feedback. You have to take your eyes off the road to see what's on the touchscreen, even if they make the buttons really big and fairly quote unquote easy to read. Whereas on a typical radio system, you tactically know which button you're on just with feeling, and you don't have to look at it nearly as much or nearly as long as taking your eyes off the road, refocusing on the short range of the screen, and then pushing the button. You're already off it, and so studies have actually demonstrated that. Of course, my second principle is, do we need internet-connected cars in general? So what would be the reason we need full internet-connected cars?
Well, not to pick on Chevy, but if you watch their Super Bowl ad, I think it was last year, they're like, we could stream the entire Super Bowl to our car, just saying. And hey, that's great, but I think the question is like, do we need that? You know, what legitimate reason do we need that much data? In some of the cases, these self-driving cars, they're putting out hundreds of megabytes a second between the wheel speed sensors and the cameras on them and all the activity happening inside the car with all the computers. Like, where's that data going and what's happening with it? So I think that's a really big question as we see more and more cars become pieces of technology.
It's a fine line, I guess. You, with as much technology as these cars have, you have to, you know, when do we cross this line? Is this too much? Do they need them now? I mean, we didn't need them 60 years ago.
Mm-hmm. I would say one thing that changed in 60 years is the improved navigation is both beneficial and increases the stupidity of society. We do not know how to read maps as in general these days. I mean, I do. I'm not sure if you guys know how to read maps very well, but most people rely on the GPSs, and if you have to have the always updated Google Maps, of course your car needs the internet, you know, where hackers can get in there and change things. It would be really funny. Hacker goes in there and starts updating the maps to do weird things, like turn your self-driving car down a cliff or something.
Not so good.
There's a spot between Wyoming and Utah on a long stretch of road that goes down to Flaming Gorge on Route 191. The GPS, every single time you go down there, it tells you, make a right here. There has never been a road there. It is actually a cliff. So, I mean, that's the type of stuff they're trying to do. And so improved navigation. The second thing they pull up is safety. How can a always connected car improve our safety?
What do you think, like ADAS and...
Yeah, when you start thinking about this, the more and more self-automation of the driving and the actual, like, the cameras, the blind spot cameras, we'll go, like, that's actually kind of an old technology in the grand scheme of things now. Driver assist, like, so you don't change lanes. Like, I'd read stories where Volvo, they were trying to change a lane and the car wouldn't let them. It's because they had, like, the lane assist on. They didn't even know it, and they were fighting the steering wheel and the car was fighting them back. You know, so if you go all the way up to the high end of, you know, you have Teslas that have, I think, 19 cameras in them, and, like, there's so much data happening in that car. Not only do you have to worry about an engine, like needs an oil change potentially, or rotate your tires and brakes and stuff. Now you have so much, your technicians and yourself, you have to almost become a scientific major when it comes to computer repair and diagnostics. Like, can you imagine trying to diagnose any one of those 19 cameras like broken, let alone anything else, your average brakes or tires or spark plugs?
And I mean, we've tested some, for example, some top-down scan tools that are the mid-grade ones, and we don't know enough about them to diagnose everything, and I could only imagine
the
what
next
we would
generation
need
of them.
for like these, your standard hole-in-the-wall technician's not going to be able to figure this stuff out.
I mean, at this point, you're pretty much plugging it in directly to a computer and using specialized software. Granted, OBD2 is still a thing in 2023 and it's still utilized, but for some of these more technical, like you'd probably plugging in a laptop to a Tesla to diagnose with like proprietary Tesla software. And that, I think that's kind of, it's a little scary because that also controls your vehicle. Like, I have a 2000 Cherokee I'm pointing over here off in a distance, and I can fix that thing and I can keep driving it. Jay has a 65 Mustang GT. We can fix that thing and we can fix it pretty easily. But like, if you don't know how to fix your car, you're almost controlled by whomever either manufactured the car or your local dealership or someone that has the keys to the kingdom, so to speak. In this case, they have the software, and they're the only one that can actually do anything in the vehicle.
The last thing they mentioned is infotainment systems. Why do we need constant connection for infotainment systems?
Well, I mentioned earlier that I miss my CarPlay, but that's just me being.
and you know how I feel about that.
Yeah.
But, now, okay. So suppose we have a CarPlay. Let's go back to the way video games, for example, were made 2 decades ago versus now. If you get the infotainment system into the vehicle and it works, why does it need to be on the internet? It's just asking to be hacked.
I would agree with that. And there was a 2015 Cherokee. They've since patched it, but people figured out how to hack into it. And so the guy's driving down the highway, and the Cherokee is slower and slower and slower because they killed the engine on him, and he was on the highway. So when you combine that with like Sony and Honda are code generating the Afila, this thing's supposed to have like a PS5 level chip in it, and Elon Musk is already out there saying, well, my Teslas already have a PS5 capable chip inside of it, so you could play PS5 games in it. I think that's a big question, is like, do we need this stuff? I'm just trying to get to work. I'm just trying to get to the grocery store kind of thing.
Right.
I don't know how my driving's doing, and I just got a ticket, but I'm the top board on my TDM match.
Another thing is, what is it? Keyless, push button start cars. Mm-hmm. The latest thing is that people walk up to your house with a tablet and they copy your key and they start your car and they steal it.
Yeah, so, and there was a lawsuit in, was it St. Louis, I think, where the Kias, they were suing Kia over the fact the cars were too easy to steal. It's like, wait, what?
And some insurance companies will not insure your Kia.
Interesting. Who will not insure your Kia?
A lot of the big ones, State Farm, and that's as of a few months ago. I don't know if they fixed that yet or not. But
yeah, I know. Looking at the technical details of that, the Kia problems were leaked. Literally, when they did the security module for the Kia, they copied a Stack Overflow, including the default password that was put in that Stack Overflow article. So literally, they probably just hired out the creation of the software to the lowest bidding company. They're like, I don't know what I'm doing. It's Stack Overflow. Looks good. Copy paste the script in there, and so everybody on the internet and your Chat GPT can actually get in there.
For people who don't know what Tom's talking about, that's bad.
Yes.
You don't do what he just said. So.
Yeah. There we go. We have a sentence here including Apple CarPlay, which connects to iPhone, the car's built-in display, enabling the driver to make calls, send texts, and listen to music while focusing on the road. Are you aware that when you sell your car, all that contact and call log stuff generally stays in the car? People with it can, and that's a good reason not to use CarPlay. But
are you aware, like when you sell your car, to speak on what Tom was talking about, that head unit could potentially end up on eBay, and then you can hack into it, and you can find people's contacts, you can find their email addresses, you can even sometimes get photos out of these head units, and some of these newer, say like 2015 to 2023, people have done that, and there's articles online about that very thing.
So it's like, I'm going to put all of my pictures in my car so I can bore my passenger with my trip. Great. That's all we need. So they're going into the article here talking about the technology constantly changing. And before we started the video here, we were discussing, if we want to have increased technology, the modular model makes sense. So sure, have some module standard that we can pop out the display and end consumer replace it. I'd rather replace a $200 screen or a $200 infotainment system than have to buy, a new $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 car when the infotainment system is obsolete. Of course, I don't know what obsolete means because I still play video games from the early 2000s, but, what do you guys think about the modular approach?
I think that would be a good way to go. Because that, for example, this tablet 5-10 years will be obsolete,
Yep.
and
And my computer's running Linux, so it will never be obsolete.
So if it goes that route, of course, automakers will probably shun that because that makes too much sense. But
I think it's a responsibility of these companies because they're trying to provide the latest and greatest tech, and with that, like great power comes great responsibility.
With great power comes great responsibility.
They need to provide some kind of. They're building a technology that's designed to be antiquated. I mean, we're all used to like blindly walking into the local cell phone carrier, or we buy a new phone every other year. But do you really want to throw your car away kind of thing, or trade it in, or constantly be like turning a lease over and constantly in a car payment or a lease simply because the technology is changing that fast?
yeah, like for example, I have a 2016 Forester, and go back to the CarPlay. There's no option for me to have CarPlay on that specific vehicle, unless I was to replace the whole head unit and, spend $1,000 more just for that. And so
the term head unit was thrown around a couple times. What is that specifically?
So, you want to take it?
yeah, so think of a head unit. We'll go back to the 90s and older cars because they're your specific, what we call single den or double den. A single den is just your standard car deck that's like this tall, has a CD player in it, whatever. And the double den is twice the size. And now they have touch screens, CarPlay and Google Play and all that.
And to touch on that real quick promo plug, we put a Jensen double din head unit touchscreen, which gives Jay Android Auto and Apple CarPlay in his car. That's a video you can see on Fresh Vintage, but that gives you the ability to, in this case, it is modular, and then for a relatively low cost, we brought a 1998 Accord into basically 2023, and now this thing has more technological advancement than the 2016 Forester that we have out here.
Yeah.
And what was that in Forester? You put that in?
No, the 98 Accord. We put
98
the
Accord.
Yeah.
So this is a car from the 90s with CarPlay. That's epic.
Exactly.
I mean, as much as I don't really want Android or Apple Play inside of my vehicle, that is pretty cool. And the fact we can do that, of course, that's kind of like, me hacking a lot of weird stuff into small stuff and be like, oh, how can I do that? Well, you got to do that. And then people are like, I'll stick to my iPhone. Thank you.
So now we have to buy you one, and then we got to figure out how to put Linux on it. We can put it in your van. So.
I mean, possibly. I actually the what I have in my van is the perfect balance. It's not like crazy infotainment, but it's just enough infotainment. I can play my music off of a USB drive. I'm happy. I don't need any more than that. And I certainly, like, my car can connect to my phone. You think I'm going to connect my car to the phone? No. I do want to get into this part here in the article because this is something that was talked about in 2017, and they're starting to actually do it now because of the proliferation of 5G. And of course, we have to tread lightly because this is one of the things that YouTube is now considering a conspiracy theory. 15-minute cities, guys. Of course, that is the YouTube is now declaring that a conspiracy theory. So, but of course, this is your smart city would be the other term. I think that might be the more PC way of saying it. Soon, thanks to V2X technology, cars will be interacting autonomously with stoplights, infrastructure, and other vehicles to increase road safety and manage traffic. So the idea here is that you have a smart city, and the smart city is going to be directly interacting with your car at all points. In their case, this is, for me, one of the things that this, yes, would probably implement safety as long as you don't have a blue screen of death. And then the car says, "Rah!" Full speed into that, line divider, because that's what Teslas like to do. Yeah, when you have a whole 5G infrastructure and your car can communicate with other cars, the two cars know where they are and can do more proactive avoidance, assuming that is inside of everything. There's a problem with that being inside of everything, though, and that is that there are some serious issues with with that, in my opinion. But what do you guys think about Bluetooth in cars interacting with the stoplights, other vehicles, whatever else? And we covered on the Weekly News Roundup, a device a person could buy so the car can interact with your person too. So if you get these, allegedly you'll get run over fewer times, I guess, by smart cars. I don't know. What do you guys think?
The only crash avoidance that jumps to me, I mean, that's a positive, I guess, but...
So, thinking about this, like, if everything... I compare it to society in general, like, excuse me, with everything being connected, how much of the equation is a human going to be? Like, if the car is communicating with the stop sign and the stop lights and the thingy on my arm so that I don't get hit by a car, how autonomous does this become? And I think in that conversation, in that construct, like the control of your own vehicle, are you slowly, very slowly relinquishing that?
Yeah, it's like Minority Report.
Security lockdown enabled. Revised destination office.
Lamar, they found me.
Where,
It kind of is,
really
yeah.
controls their car. You just tell the destination. And then they'll let you jump in.
Sorry, it's kind of like what you mentioned earlier about how nobody knows how to read a map. Mm-hmm. Is it going to be that people are going to forget how to drive?
Well, they've already forgotten how to do basic math.
Well, I know. Yes,
So,
I mean
the feeling of power.
we can't-
Isaac Asimov.
we can't. People can't navigate a roundabout down the street here. So
Yeah, literally around down the street here. Yeah. So,
Yes.
but I think that is a good question. Is if everything is 5G connected, just to throw that out, and I don't even want to mention 6G, but they're talking about 6G. If everything is connected, does the driver even need to be there? That sounds like a wild idea, but in theory, if everything's connected and nothing hiccups and nothing breaks or the power doesn't go out, we haven't even had that conversation. What happens if you're driving through an intersection and someone hits a pole and knocks the...
But power can never go out. It's the critical infrastructure.
Yeah, that'll never happen, right? So, I think that as car companies try to become more and more technology, they're edging one out. They're like 1 plus 1 plus 1. They're just trying to beat each one out, one by one, little by little, and in doing so, boom, we're at the Apple iCar. And then we're gonna, 5 years, we're gonna have the iCar 10 or something like that. And they're gonna have the 10 Pro Max. That's gonna have all-wheel drive and more horsepower, if you will, a bigger battery.
a big SUV.
That'll be the SUV, yeah, the Pro Max. Yeah, it's a concern. It really is a concern. Do we need, knowing that my Cherokee out here, you can drive and fix it till the end of time. Do you need all the self-driving? Do you need the constant data connectivity? Do you need all of this technology in your cars?
There was also the case, we covered this also in the Weekly News Roundup. I mean, we've been doing this for 6 years now, so we've covered a lot of articles. There was a smart car, somebody rented a smart car, and then they went camping with it. And it got out of range of the cell connection and simply stopped. They had to get a tow truck to tow it back within range of the cell connection. So the thing could, here I am, let's start and go. And, that's kind of a problem. Your car just stops driving simply because it cannot find a cell connection.
Yeah, we're going to be more dependent on power and cell connection.
Which is something they're trying to cut back. In fact, I was one of the followers of the channel. I was down there visiting with them, and he was telling me that despite being and having nuclear as their primary power source, they still had blackouts. He's trying to figure out why. Because the government mandates that they have blackouts. This is predictive programming to get people ready for a society where sometimes your power just cuts down, which is a terrifying thought to think of in a society that is being driven and driven and driven by power. So there's that. Anything else to say on that before we get into our last final hilarious conclusion of this article? Now, you have to remember, this article is written in 2017, and this is a quote from somebody. So Breyer, who's one of the guys we're interviewing here, autonomous cars don't get into accidents. People do. Accidents are expensive for cities, so it's very possible that in the next 15 years, they could charge fees for human-controlled cars to drive in certain areas. Okay, autonomous cars don't get in accidents. I actually argue that per capita, that is per car on the road, I think that autonomous cars get into more accidents than people-driven cars, considering that there are billions of cars on the road at any given point in time, and how few autonomous cars are on the road, and we're still seeing a lot of accidents come out of them. And we've covered several of those crashes. So despite, yes, if you have the perfect world where everything is perfectly 5G connected and every car is driving themselves and you don't have a blue screen of death and the power doesn't go down due to a mandated blackout, then or some other accident or something else that occurs that knocks the power down in some region, yes, that could increase safety, but at what cost? Because at that point in time, we are simply slaves to the technology that we've created. What do you guys think? Concluding thoughts?
It says there could be charging fees for human-controlled cars to drive in certain areas. I think that dovetails in nicely with my call it a conspiracy theory, but like, how do you get people to stop driving cars? Is you charge them until they don't want to drive their car. And granted, that's a tinfoil hat statement, but if your car suddenly costs an extra $500 or $1,000 or more to the point where you have a car you drive by yourself, your car insurance is suddenly fees for human-controlled cars, is your car insurance is $5,000 or $6,000 a year, to where people are like, I'll just punch Uber and because it's cheaper and they get there pretty quick and they get me there fast enough, thereby relinquishing control of your own vehicle and the ability to drive. And on top of that, again, that sounds tinfoil hat, but on top of that, then it becomes a luxury that fewer and fewer people can afford, to where you can't drive your own car down the road because you're spending hundreds, if not maybe thousands of dollars between car insurance and a car payment and the other monthly fees, like BMW and other companies out here are starting to charge $20 a month just to have heated seats. I mean, that's kind of like lunacy. Talk about a Sillyville article, you know what I mean? Like charging $20 a month for optional features in the vehicle.
Yeah,
so,
that was a Sillyville article. We have about 1 minute left before our camera shuts down. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, on top of that, I mean, because I'm always thinking about old cars and classic cars, and is that gonna push antique cars out where nobody wants them, or because you can't afford to drive them?
Yeah, that's a true point. Well, there was our fun discussion on cars, technology, privacy, and a bunch of other fun things. Of course, we're here with Jay and Tom from Fresh Vintage. I'll have a link to their channel in the comments down below, and we have carded a few articles here along the way. So thanks for watching, everybody. Subscribe to the channel if you've not already done so, and this has been Tom with Switched to Linux.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for watching this video from Switched to Linux. This channel would not be possible without the backing of the program supporters scrolling on the screen now. You can be a supporter at Patreon at patreon.com/TOMM or at thinklifemedia.com. I also want to thank the open source community who creates such excellent software that makes producing this show possible. Please remember to support your software communities. Thank you, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.